Assalamu alaikum, adab, good morning, sat sri akal, namaskar. My name is Sayyid Qaswar Abbas. Today, I'm going to talk about United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 14, life below water. Conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. Definition and explanation. Oceans, seas, and coastal areas form an integrated and essential component of the Earth's ecosystem and are critical to sustainable development. They cover more than two-thirds of the Earth's surface and contain 97% of the planet's water. Oceans contribute to poverty eradication by creating sustainable livelihoods and decent work. Over 3 billion people depend on marine and coastal resources for their livelihoods. In addition, oceans are crucial for global food security and human health. They are also the primary regulator of the global climate, an important sink for greenhouse gases, and they provide us with water and the oxygen we breathe. Finally, oceans host huge reservoirs of biodiversity. Before COVID-19, oceans acidification continues to threaten marine environments and ecosystem services. 100 to 150% rise in ocean acidity is projected by year 2100, affecting half of all marine life. Countries are required to make sincere efforts in declaring the protected areas and take effective measures to enforce it. Global marine key biodiversity areas covered by protected areas increased being 30.5% in year 2000, 44.8% in year 2015, and 46% in year 2019. The drastic reduction in human activity brought about by COVID-19 may be a chance for oceans to recuperate. 97 countries signed the agreement on port state measures, the first binding international agreement on illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Data and statistics, facts and figures. Oceans cover three-quarters of the Earth's surface, contain 97% of the Earth's water, and represent 99% of the living space on the planet by volume. Over 3 billion people depend on marine and coastal biodiversity for their livelihoods. Globally, the market value of marine and coastal resources and industries is estimated at $3 trillion per year, or about 5% of global GDP. Oceans absorb about 30% of carbon dioxide produced by humans, buffering the impacts of global warming. Oceans serve as the world's largest source of protein, with more than 3 billion people depending on the oceans as their primary source of protein. Marine fisheries, directly or indirectly, employ over 200 million people. What is needed to be done? In order for oceans, seas, and marine resources to successfully contribute to human well-being, ecosystem integrity with properly functioning biogeochemical and physical processes is required. This does not require unperturbed systems, but systems that have not suffered serious or irreversible harm. Ecosystem integrity allows for the provision of so-called supporting ecosystem services, which in turn are the basis of important regulating, provisioning, and cultural ecosystem services that are of crucial importance for humans. Whereas the benefits provided by oceans, seas, and marine resources are important to all people, the poor, indigenous people, and vulnerable groups with a high dependency on natural resources and ecosystem services may have their well-being especially tied to these benefits. The link between oceans, seas, and marine resources and human well-being is not one-sided. While an increase in human well-being is frequently generated at the cost of ecosystem integrity, it can also potentially reduce the negative anthropogenic impacts on the marine environment. For example, due to a more sustainable use of resources, changes in production and consumption patterns, and improved management and control of human activities. In order for this to happen, good governance and an enabling environment are, however, required. Oceans, seas, and marine resources are increasingly threatened, degraded, and destroyed by human activities, reducing their ability to provide crucial ecosystem services. Important classes of threats are, among others, climate change, marine pollution, unsustainable extraction of marine resources, and physical alterations and destruction of marine and coastal habitats and landscapes. The deterioration of coastal and marine ecosystems and habitats is negatively affecting human well-being worldwide. Good governance and enabling environment, sustainable land and marine-based human activities, and adequate measures will be required to reduce the negative anthropogenic impacts on the marine environment. For example, due to a more sustainable use of resources, changes in production and consumption patterns, and improved management and control of human activities. Projects and measures should ideally be designed and implemented in an integrated, cross sectoral, and cross scale manner in line with the ecosystem approach and involving all stakeholders. Human well being cannot be achieved without the protection and conservation of the Earth's ecosystem. To maintain the quality of life that oceans have provided to humankind while sustaining the integrity of their ecosystems, a change will be required in how humans view, manage, and use oceans, seas, and marine resources. Ocean acidification and its impacts. The relentless rise in percentage of atmospheric carbon dioxide since the Industrial Revolution is well-known fact. Carbon dioxide is considered as one of the key players among the greenhouse gases that has contributed the most towards global warming. The current hot topic among environmentalists, scientists, and even politicians. Another key issue is increasing being discussed nowadays is ocean acidification. Ocean acidification is an ongoing change in the chemistry of the ocean caused primarily by the ocean's absorption of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. What is ocean acidification? Around one-fourth of the carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere via various processes, either natural or artificial, is absorbed by the ocean. Initially, the scientists assumed it to be an eco-friendly process since it reduced the carbon dioxide percentage in the atmosphere. But like any other natural process or mechanism, since the threshold is crossed, the actual threat reveals itself. When carbon dioxide dissolves in the seawater, the water becomes more acidic and the ocean's pH drops. Even though the ocean is immense enough, carbon dioxide can have a major impact. In the past 200 years alone, ocean water has become 30% more acidic, faster than any known change in ocean chemistry in last 50 million years. Consequences of ocean acidification. Ocean acidification increases the amount of energy needed by many small marine organisms in constructing their carbonate shells and structures. In some places, it will become impossible for these organisms to live as the sea water will turn corrosive to the shells and skeletons of numerous marine organisms, affecting their reproduction and physiology. Squid are the fastest invertebrates in the oceans and require high level of oxygen for their high energy swimming. Increasingly, acidic oceans interface with the acidity of a squid's blood and consequently the amount of oxygen that it can carry. Squid are important prey for many marine mammals, including beaked and sperm whales. Squid fisheries are also the most lucrative fisheries around the world, generating millions of dollars in revenues each year. Tiny swimming sea snails called pteropods are considered the potato chips of the sea, as they serve as a critical part of Arctic marine food web, ultimately feeding whales and other top predators. Pteropods' shells are expected to dissolve in acidity levels predicted by the end of this century and may not be able to survive. Population crashes or changes in the distribution of pteropods would have serious implications for some of the most abundant marine ecosystems. Within the next few decades, the chemistry of the tropical oceans will not sustain coral reef growth, while large parts of the polar oceans will become corrosive to calcareous marine organisms. Research shows that brittle stars, who act as important burrowers and as food items for flatfish, could face a severe population decline due to the rise in acidity. The adults might lose muscle mass while regenerating their arms, and most of the larvae won't survive. Apart from ecological issues, the decline in quality and quantity of several species indeed affects the economies that rely heavily on the fisheries sector, thereby incurring heavy losses. Although regions with seafood as staple will hit numerous bottlenecks like food shortage, health issues, etc. Scientists and Monaco Declaration. The Monaco Declaration represents 155 marine scientists from 26 countries who met at an ocean acidification conference in October 2017. According to the Monaco Declaration, even though the overall ecological impact of CO2 induced acidification is unclear, the plight of these species affects the food supply for countless predators worldwide, including humans, and this ripple effect throughout marine ecosystems could be disastrous. The scientists urged governments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and dedicate more resources to understanding acidification. Surface ocean acidity has increased 30% since the Industrial Revolution. The level of acidity measured in pH currently appears modest, that is, a zero point zero 0.01 decrease of surface ocean pH worldwide, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change (IPCC). Yet, some scientists may already be noticing the effects of acidification. Australian researchers reported last year that sea snails in the Southern Ocean are forming thinner shells in recent years. The regions dependent on the Mediterranean Sea, like MENA and other European countries, have recorded a serious decline in the quality of its aquatic food and ecotourism. Similarly, researchers recorded more than 20% drops in the skeletal density of some Great Barrier Reef corals. According to the Monaco Declaration, by mid century, ocean acidification may render most regions chemically inhospitable to coral reefs. The IPCC also predicts acidification could cause a zero point 0.4 decrease in ocean surface pH by 2100. Based on current trends, acidification will likely be more severe at higher latitudes than near the equator. The declaration also notes that geoengineering schemes, plans that could alter the environment intentionally in order to reduce the effects of climate change, are likely to address ocean acidification. In theory, an attempt to deflect solar radiation would regulate the amount of sunlight that reaches Earth. But this would not reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere or oceans, scientists say. Scientists have also discussed plans to spread greenhouse gas absorbing algae throughout the ocean. But even if The algae reduce carbon dioxide in the air. The gases would then be stored under the sea. The European Project on Ocean Acidification (EPOCA) is aimed at organizing research efforts across the European Union. In the United States, Congress is considering legislation that would develop a plan for ocean acidification research and monitoring. The way forward. This issue deserves to be discussed on the same forum as global warming and climate change, as these issues share a critical common factor, carbon dioxide. The consequences of ocean acidification are more than enough to have the policymakers draft amendments after amendments in the current environment protection laws and regulations and ensure their stringent execution. Communication between the different stakeholders is crucial. Scientists, policymakers, CEOs, businessmen, traders, bankers, international organizations, and NGOs. Through environmental education and training, the population can be informed and included in adaptive capacities. To convince people about ocean acidification risk, scientific facts may be disseminated on a mass scale. The masses should know that the phenomena is amplifying year after year because the effects are cumulative and that it is really urgent to find mitigation and adaptation solutions for ocean acidification. Water pollution worries in the developing world. Water pollution has become a major concern worldwide, especially in developing countries where around 3.2 million children die each year as a result of unsafe drinking water and poor sanitation. Access to adequate wastewater treatment facilities in the developing countries is very limited. For example, only 209 of India's 3,119 towns and cities, less than 1 in 10, have even partial sewage systems and treatment facilities. As a result, water bodies in developing nations are often used as open sewers for human waste products and garbage, which is evident at the Ganges River in India, which receives over 1.3 billion liters of domestic waste, along with 260 million liters of industrial waste, runoff from 6 million tons of fertilizers, and 9,000 tons of pesticides used in agriculture, and thousands of animal carcasses. The reason behind the absence of adequate water treatment facilities and regulations in developing countries is the lack of finances available for funding infrastructure that can regulate water pollution. This, in turn, reduces the amount of clean water available for human consumption, sanitation, agriculture, and industrial purposes, in addition to various other ecosystem services. A decrease in the amount of water available for use holds devastating environmental, health, and economic consequences that disrupt a country's social and economic growth. Environmental and human health costs. Unsafe water, lack of sanitation facilities, and poor hygiene are the leading causes of mortality and morbidity in developing countries because contaminated water carries various diseases such as cholera, intestinal worms, and diarrhea. It is estimated that up to half of all hospital beds in the world are occupied by victims of water contamination. Furthermore, dirty water standing in the puddles are stored provides a perfect breeding ground for mosquitoes that go on to spread diseases such as malaria and encephalitis. The UN estimates that 60% of global cases of malaria and 80% of malaria deaths in sub Saharan Africa, nearly 1 million per year, are related to inadequate water storage facilities. Economic implications of water pollution. It is estimated that around $7.3 million is spent on healthcare for waterborne diseases alone. Furthermore, large amounts of money are lost due to the deteriorating health of a country's population, with many citizens unable to attend school or work due to health issues. Above all, water pollution and lack of sanitation holds a significant burden on women. Teenage women are unable to attend schools that lack adequate sanitation and are often interested in collecting groundwater for their families due to the lack of a constant water supply. Women embark on 3 to 4 hours treks in order to collect contaminated water, which they carry back to their homes. This deprives them from the possibility of attending school or holding a permanent job, thus further reducing a family's income. Water quality is also important for various industries such as power generation, metals, mining, and petroleum that require high quality water to operate. Lower quality water could impact and limit the choices of technology available to developing countries. Reductions in water quality have the dual effect of not only increasing the water stress to industrial companies in these areas, but also increase the pressure to improve the quality of industrial wastewater. This in turn increases the cost spent on environmental rehabilitation and remediation. Tackling the challenge. Water quality is gradually becoming the leading problem throughout the developing world. Drinking water sources are under increasing threat from contamination, which holds widespread consequences for the health and economic and social development of various countries. Governments in the developing nations, as well as donor nations and organizations, should strengthen efforts to provide adequate water services for their citizens. Water policies must be redefined and be strictly implemented, and water programs should be better integrated into a country's cultures and values that they have been in the past. Water programs are not required to be large scale and financially intensive and can be simple and financially viable. An example of such a program is Water.org's use of the microloan system. This system entails providing microloans to local families to allow them to build adequate piping systems and sanitation facilities within their homes. This will allow for an increase in the family's income due to better health and less time spent on water collection. If the governments of developing countries adopt such a system, it will provide them with a simple yet efficient solution to the water pollution dilemma that will also produce massive payback for the country. Therefore, it is evident that although water pollution can be lessened through the help of donor nations and organizations, the key to addressing these issues lies within the developing countries themselves. Governments must realize that action must be taken immediately, because if water pollution continues to grow, the future will be very bleak. Egypt's water crisis and degeneration of Nile. Egypt is struggling to cope with water shortages and food production. It is expected that Egypt's per capita annual water supply will drop from 600 cubic meters today to 500 cubic meters by 2025, which is the UN threshold for absolute water scarcity. Egypt has only 20 cubic meters per person of internal renewable freshwater resources, and as a result, the country relies heavily on the Nile for its main source of water. Water scarcity has become so severe that it has been recorded that certain areas in the country could go days without water, with pressure sometimes returning only for a few hours a week. The country can no longer delay action and must act now. Pollution of the Nile. The Nile has been lifeline for Egypt at least since the time of pharaohs. Yet, despite the world's largest river's importance to the country, its water is being polluted by various sources, and pollution levels increasing exponentially in recent years. The degeneration of the Nile is an issue that is regularly underestimated in Egypt. With so many people relying on the Nile for drinking, agriculture, and municipal use, the quality of that water should be of most importance. The waters are mainly being polluted by municipal and industrial waste, with many recorded incidents of leakage of wastewater and dumping of dead animal carcasses and the release of chemical and hazardous industrial waste into the Nile River. Industrial waste has led to the presence of metals, especially heavy metals, in the water, which pose a significant risk not only on human health but also on the animal health and agriculture production. Fish die in large numbers from poisoning because of the high level of ammonia and lead. Agriculture production quality and quantity has been affected by using untreated water for irrigation, as the bacteria and the metals in the water affect the growth of the plant produce, especially in the Nile Delta where the pollution is highest. Key business themes addressed by this sustainable development goal: A. Marine biodiversity. B. Ocean acidification. C. Environmental investments. D. Spills. E. Sustainable sourcing. F. Water discharge to oceans. Examples of key business actions and solutions. The below examples are non exhaustive and some may be more relevant to certain industries than to others. A. Track the life cycle of products and materials in order to understand how they are disposed and which products could likely find their way into marine environment. B. Record and disclose information on the chemical and material usage within products, packaging, and processing systems to facilitate closing the loop. C. Improve resource efficiency by altering the design, manufacturing, or use of products and packaging to reduce the amount of waste that could potentially enter the environment. D. Improve resource efficiency by generating value from waste. E. Replace, limit, or prohibit the use of certain chemicals, additives, or materials that could prevent closing the loop or lead to nutrient pollution or chemical and physical hazards if they happen to reach marine ecosystems. F. Prevent waste mismanagement or littering that could pollute the marine environment. G. Raise consumer awareness on effective ways to properly dispose of their waste to discourage littering and promote responsible behavior. H. Prohibit practices that put marine species and resources at further risk of harm, exploitation, or depletion. I. Contribute to the development of waste management technologies that minimize the use of clean water. J. Utilize a value chain approach to create connections between the design, packaging, marketing, and recycling of materials with the goals of reducing the environmental impact at the end of their life cycle. Islamic perspective about life below water. World's oceans, their temperature, chemistry, currents, and life drive global systems that make the earth habitable for humankind. Our rainwater, drinking water, weather, climate, coastlines, much of our food, and even the oxygen in the air we breathe are all ultimately provided and regulated by the sea. While some of the early Islamic scholars may have missed out the Sharia emphasis on protection of the planet, it is understandable due to the absence of evidence regarding perils of climate change and the importance of protecting the planet and environment. The Holy Quran, however, provides clear reference to the perils of putting the planet at risk due to irresponsible human action. Corruption doth appear on land and sea because of the evil which men's hands have done, that he may make them taste a part of that which they have done, in order that they may return. Surah Al-Rum 41. Holy Quran commands us to protect all animals and birds as they also live in communities like humans. Means if humans don't protect other species and communities, destruction is surely coming to humans as well. Holy Quran says, there is not an animal that lives on the earth, nor a being that flies on its wings, but form part of communities like you. Al Quran, Ayah 6-38. Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, all praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who gave us fresh sweet water to drink out of his mercy and did not make it bitter due to our wrongdoings. Tabrani, Kitab al-Dua, volume 2, page 1218. Besides, the Prophet and his companions also practically taught us how to protect the rights of animals. They took special care of crippled animals, rescued strays, and guarded birds' nests. One of the companions was named Abu Huraira, father of kittens, because he was very fond of kittens. The Prophet accorded great value to animals. Driven by his care and compassion for the animals, the Prophet himself narrated a story of his companions so they would derive inspiration from it. A man felt very thirsty while he was on the way. There he came across a well. He went down the well, quenched his thirst, and came out. Meanwhile, he saw a dog panting and licking mud because of excessive thirst. He said to himself, this dog is suffering from thirst as I did. So he went down the well again, filled his shoe with water, held it with his mouth, and watered the dog. Allah appreciated him for that deed and forgave him. The companion said, O Allah's Messenger, is there a reward for us in serving the animals? He replied, there is a reward for serving any living being. Source Bukhari. Sustainable Development Goal number 14 targets. By 2025, prevent and significantly reduce marine pollution of all kinds, particularly from land-based activities, including marine debris and nutrient pollution. By 2020, simultaneously manage and protect marine and coastal ecosystems to avoid significant adverse impacts, including by strengthening their resilience, and take action from their restoration to achieve healthy and productive oceans. Minimize and address the impacts of ocean acidification, including through enhanced scientific cooperation at all levels. By 2020, effectively regulate harvesting and end overfishing, illegal and unreported and unregulated IUU fishing, and destructive fishing practices, and implement science based management plans to restore fish stocks in the shortest time feasible, at least to the levels that can produce maximum sustainable yield as determined by their biological characteristics. By 2020, conserve at least 10% of coastal and marine areas consistent with national and international law and based on best available scientific information. By 2020, prohibit certain forms of fisheries subsidies which contribute to overcapacity and overfishing, and eliminate subsidies that contribute to IUU fishing, and refrain from introducing new such subsidies, recognizing that appropriate and effective special and differential treatment for developing and least developed countries should be an integral part of the WTO fisheries subsidies negotiation. By 2030, increase the economic benefits to SIDS and LDCs from the sustainable use of marine resources, including through sustainable management of fisheries, aquaculture, and tourism. Increase scientific knowledge, develop research capacities, and transfer marine technology, taking into account the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission criteria and guidelines on the transfer of marine technology in order to improve ocean health and to enhance the contribution of marine biodiversity to the development of developing countries, in particular SIDS and LDCs. Provide access of small scale artisanal fishers to marine resources and markets. Ensure the full implementation of international law as reflected in UNCLOS for states parties to it, including where applicable, existing regional and international regimes for the conservation and sustainable use of oceans and their resources by their parties. That concludes my today's talk, ladies and gentlemen. I'm profoundly thankful to all of you for listening to me as well as passing on to others. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestow His guidance upon you all and grant you what's best suited for you. Allah Hafiz till next time.